Me llamo Jerry Olla. I'm going to be going through some stuff with Wireshark. I know you guys have had some presentations already around Wireshark, so hopefully this is going to kind of just take us a little bit further into that. We're going to go through and do some stuff, visualizing stuff out of Wireshark, right? Usually when we think of Wireshark, we think of lots of text, things like that, but there is some capabilities that we can do with visualizing the output out of that. So that's what I'm going to try to show you here today with this short kind of presentation. So it looks like we got the slides up. So the software we're going to use, that I'll be using here is Wireshark. Optionally and highly recommended if you have a Mac is also getting AirTool. That's gonna, I'll show you how that kind of ties into this, but that makes it a lot easier for the capture side of things. We can even do live capture and analysis with that. You don't need it, but it makes it a lot easier to configure everything and get those captures. So then when we talk about the capture hardware, lots of options. You know, that's a common question. You know, okay, I've got Wireshark. Now how do I actually get these packets? How do I sniff the Wi-Fi traffic out of the air? Thankfully, there's a lot of options that we have available today and even more coming soon. I work at Hamina. We're going to be coming out with the Nomad that we talked about earlier, and that's going to also have that packet capture functionality. So that's going to be another not only measurement tool that you can use for measuring Wi-Fi, you can also use that as a packet capture sniffing device as well. For this presentation, I'll just be using the internal Wi-Fi adapter on my MacBook, and that should allow us to see what we need to today. But yeah, quite a few options out there. You may already have some of this hardware today, but yeah, if you have a Windows device, connect any of these types of devices, and you can do these kind of things that I'll be demoing here. So the first tip I have around Wireshark is customizing the layout in Wireshark to add the packet diagram that's going to help with, you know, again, visualizing, giving you some visualization of the frames themselves that you're capturing. I think you guys covered this pretty good in the previous presentation, right? You walked through, like, for the packet diagram, setting all that up. So you'll see what that looks like here when I open up Wireshark, but if you haven't configured that, highly recommend that. The second tip I have that Fernay also covered is, and actually sent this out to you guys in your email, but download this master profile, WLAN Pro's master profile. You'll see quickly how that ties into the visualizations that I'm going to be showing you with the I/O graphs. All those filters that we can filter the text information, we can also filter in the I/O graphs. So I'll be working back and forth between through that profile and all the filters that are there to streamline that. All right, so now on to the Wireshark I/O graph. How many of you used the I/O graph within Wireshark before to do any kind of analysis? Not surprised. I've actually recently kind of discovered it myself. So this was kind of committing to teaching you guys about the I/O graph really forced me to kind of dig into that, which is what I love about the WLPC conference is, you know, I always try to pick a topic that it's like, okay, I've got some use cases for that. I'm not an expert in that yet, but this kind of motivates me to become a little bit more knowledgeable in that subject. So I am not a Wireshark expert. I'm not an I/O graph expert. I've done enough with it now where I can, show some usefulness out of that, and hopefully you guys can kind of take that and run with it from there. But the important thing to understand about the I/O graph is that what it's doing is it's plotting out the protocol and packet data in a number of different ways. We can kind of slice it up multiple different ways, but it's all based on the packet data and that we're going to capture. So we can it divides all that information in time intervals, so that's an important factor to keep in mind when we're visualizing this. It's all an XY axis, and it's all that information over a period of time. So that can be very useful for certain things. Other things that we want to visualize, we may not want that time piece. That's going to be potentially a limitation of the I/O graph, and that's where you might want to break out that data into some other tool that then you can analyze that further. So we'll just focus on the time variable there. Also, another point that I learned was all these graphs that we're going to create and look at, all those are tied to that profile. So in the previous slide, I talked about that WLAN Pro's profile. you want to make sure you tie, or any of those, that you're in the right profile when you're creating these graphs, right? Otherwise, the next time you open it up, if you're not in that profile, you're going to be like, what happened to all my graphs, all that work that you did? So make sure you're in the right profile before you access that IO graph and start making those graphs. The last thing is one thing I found that's really cool about this is once we have visualized some information and we find something in that graph that's useful, it all ties back to the other window, our text-based window, where now I can click on any element in the graph and it jumps to that packet that's associated with that. So I'll show you how that works here, but it's pretty slick. So let's do some demoing here rather than going through any more slides. I've got Wireshark pulled up here. And within Wireshark, right away, you can see I've got my packet diagram showing here. And I've got a packet capture already opened. And let's just take a look at this capture here. So where you go to access the IO graph is under the statistics here. If I zoom in a little bit, you can see that a little better. We're going to go under IO graphs, and we're going to open this up. And you can see I've already created a few things in my IO graph that we can look at. So I did a capture. This was just a capture at the hotel here. And I did some tests with my iPhone and did a speed test with that so we can look at that traffic. So let's uncheck these options. So I've created a few filters just to kind of explore this a little bit and see how I set this up. Number of different ways you can create these filters. Let me just spread these columns out so you can see this a little easier. But this is what I'm talking about. All these filters now are created under this profile, under that WLAN Pros profile. So here's some of those filters that I've created, and let's take a look at a couple of these and see if we can find anything useful in the data here. So the first one here is my iPhone, and I'm just going to check the box there, and all we're filtering on is show me a visualization of all the packets that match the filter of having a WLAN address of that MAC address, which is the MAC address of my iPhone. So now we can see that, and I've created this style using a step line. I could also visualize that a different way if I want to do like maybe a bar. So this would be visualizing that same information using a bar chart instead of a line. So that could be, we can see there's some clearly over time, there were some pockets of a lot of traffic, right? A lot of packets. And that, again, we've got the time variable, and then we've got the packets variable. So this is showing over an interval of 1 second intervals, how many packets were sent in that 1 second period of time. So you can see at the peak here, we were seeing all the way up to 6,000 packets from that device. All right, so that's not too interesting other than just there was a lot of traffic at certain points in time. Let's look through some of these other ones. If I want to look at the AP, similarly, I can do that. We can see just from an AP standpoint, what was the AP doing over that period of time. And again, we could flip that to like a bar chart. So we can see, the AP much busier continuously. And then let's go ahead and look at some more interesting stuff. So where I think it starts to get more interesting is looking at things like, all right, so one thing that actually I don't find this to be all that interesting, but there is some specific use cases that I found for this, is this is looking at now RSSI of that client device. So we're filtered down to that client device, and now we're looking at over time, what's happening with the signal strength of that device. Now keep in mind, this is from the perspective of the capture device. So this isn't like necessarily what the AP is hearing or the client is hearing. We're looking at, okay, how loud did our capture device hear that client? So it could be useful depending on what you're trying to do, but let's go ahead and look at the more useful ones here. So what I also created was a couple filters of different directions of traffic. So the next one I want to show you here is going to be these retries, and we're going to focus on the client device to the AP. How many retries did we see over that time interval? So if I check this box here, now we're looking at this plot of retries, and yeah, you can see that okay, right? Yep. So you can see there were some high retries during certain periods of time, right? We can kind of clearly see that. And if I even want to zoom in on that, I can switch my cursor here to zoom. I could select that specific area, and now I can kind of focus in and zoom in on that. If I even wanted to flip this from, instead of just from the start of this capture, it shows this time interval here of how many seconds. We could even look at it from a time of day. And now we can look at that from, okay, at what time did that event occur. So this could be something where a user reports a problem. If you're running a continuous capture, you can say, okay, when you have that issue, let me know what time that happened at, and now you can go to that specific spot on the capture, and we can look at that. And we could even zoom in, at that time. So using the shortcut keys, if you right-click here, you can see there's a bunch of different shortcuts of different ways we can zoom in and on the different axes. And then if we want to go back to reset the graph here, so let's say I want to drill down into, I see this little dot way up here on the top. Let me zoom in so we can see, we've got this dot is the one I'm looking at way up here. So that's indicating to me that's where we had the highest amount of retries during this capture at that point in the capture. So if we want to zoom in on that, or zoom, go to that specific packet or what was happening in the packet capture, I'll just kind of resize this window so you can see I still have my normal Wireshark view open behind this. And now what I can actually do, if I make sure first, what I want to do is add in the number column here. And what we're going to do is, let me just go back to our I/O graph, and I'm going to click on this right here. And notice what it did was it actually, just by clicking on the dot on my visualization graph, it actually jumps to that packet. So you can see now we've got that packet selected. We can drill down into it. It's frame, 39,000 or 391,000. But yeah, if we want to kind of see, okay, what was happening at that point in time, and notice, yeah, right here, we can see there's a bunch of retries happening, right? So that makes it nice. Instead of me trying to skim through all this and find where all these retries and stuff are, now I can drill down into the text data to find that. So if we want to see actually what was happening here, let's look at a couple other visualizations. So I showed you the retries client to AP, but I also set up a filter that is the other direction, so from the AP to the client. So notice similarly, we have a similar kind of issue going on here where we have both very high retries going from the client to the AP as well as the AP to the client. So this isn't just a one direction kind of issue. Both directions are having issues. So it was okay, at the very beginning, we saw some sporadic kind of retries here, and then we saw a lot more retries here. So now let's look at some more details about like the data rates, things that were happening at that time as well. All right, so if I check these two boxes here, now what we're going to focus in on is the actual data rates. So this is the actual data rates of the speed at which each of these radios are talking to each other. So if we want to just filter first maybe on the AP to client, so here we can see on the left side, here's all the different data rates. We can see from 0 megabits per second all the way up to a little over 500 megabits per second. So really good data rates right here. And if we correlate that back to our original kind of view of like the bar chart, we can see, kind of see there. Let me actually turn this from bar back to line so we can kind of see this a little bit better. There we go. So yeah, now we can kind of see where those data rates are. So we can see we had some higher data rates over here, and then the data rates dropped off here. And we're going to also kind of zoom out on this one a little bit. So yeah, that should help a little bit. Okay, so now we can kind of see where those where that traffic was in relation to the data rates. And flip that back. And if we look at the other direction of data rates going client to AP, we can see, yeah, there was the client was talking really fast right here, and then it gets into this area and it really slowed down, right? We dropped all the way down from over 500 megabits per second down to 300, 400 megabit per second there. So it had a shift, right? It rate shifted down. We could also look at it from the perspective of MCS rates, right? Which is what drives, how we get those data rates. So we could also look at, MCS rate AP to client or MCS rate client to AP. And obviously those should match fairly similarly because that's where it's deriving those data rates from. So another number of different ways we can kind of slice that and look at it. But yeah, that's, so if you want to know what was happening at that time, so what I did to kind of create some useful data that we could look at during this demo is I actually took my iPhone and I did a speed test. And what I'll do is, to really kind of push the limits here on this live demo, is let's actually get a live capture going. And let's see if we can do this without causing Wireshark to crash here. So I'm going to do a capture using my internal adapter on my MacBook, but again, you could use the WLPC or any other of those capture devices. So I'm just going to start a capture on the 40 megahertz, on channel 40 here, 40 megahertz wide. And then what we're going to do, you can see the capture coming in. So I'm going to switch the profile right back to my WLAN Pro's master profile, because that's where all my graphs are. Now this is a live capture, just caching it here. But what we can do is I can flip open to the I/O graph while this capture is happening, and we can actually build these I/O graphs live. So I can go in here and I can say, okay, show me the RSSI of my iPhone. If my iPhone is connected, which it's not, so let's get that connected first. And then we should start to see that show up here once it actually connects. There we go. Okay, so now we're streaming in the RSSI of my iPhone connected to the Wi-Fi on the hotel's network, and I'm capturing it with my MacBook, and we can kind of see as I move my phone around and put it into different orientations, we'll see that signal updating in pretty close to real time, right? So right now, if we zoom out a little bit, because it's showing very little movement really, it looks like a lot, but if we zoom out, I'm just going to hold down Shift-Y to kind of zoom out. We can see it's actually coming in pretty steady. I'm going to change this interval, again, really push the limits here of Wireshark. I'm going to change this interval all the way down to 100 milliseconds so we get some really fast updates on here. And now I'm just going to reset this. So this is a nice live view of the iPhone. And you'll see as I just even kind of rotate it around how that's going to affect the signal. And then to really cause the signal to drop, let me try and cover the antennas here. And you can hopefully kind of see that signal dropping as I'm just putting my hand over it. And then obviously if I move it closer, again, this is the RSSI of my capture device. So keep that in mind as I move my phone closer, or I'll just kind of walk a little further away. You'll be able to see pretty quickly how fast that will start to drop off, right? So this could be retries. All that's being captured, right? So I'm just looking at RSSI right now, but what if we want to see what was happening while I was putting my hand over the device, moving it around? So now we're graphing out retries, right? Look how many retries are happening all the time, right? We don't think too much about retries. It's kind of cool to almost visualize it like this. Every one of these little dots is over 100 millisecond period of time is how many retries happened at that period of time in 100 milliseconds. And we can drop it down further than that. Again, we'll keep pushing the limits until Wireshark crashes, It hasn't crashed yet. I'm kind of impressed, so we'll just keep going until it crashes. So this is all the way down now to 10 millisecond intervals, and you can see there's multiple retries that are happening. And again, we're just filtering onto my iPhone. The different colors represent which direction. So green is retries client to AP, and red is AP to client. So a lot more red, I would say, we're seeing, right, which is AP to client. So from the AP to my phone, we're actually seeing a lot more retries from, the AP is having to retransmit that information. Basically, my phone is not getting acknowledgments back to the AP, as well as the AP is acknowledging my phone. Let's just drop that down one more. I'll go all the way down to the lowest, 1 millisecond. And you can see it's starting to struggle a little bit to build this all real time. Remember, this is live data coming in, and it's graphing it out as that data is coming in. But pretty cool to see, right? We're all the way down to 1 millisecond intervals, and it's still, graphing that out. And then if we wanted to zoom in, at the more recent time, we could also do that. And we can see if I drag this over here, and it may have stopped. I'm not seeing it actually updating as much now. So we may have finally reached its kind of breaking point. It is still capturing. So yeah, it might just be the visualization is just kind of catching up. But that's pretty much what I have for you. I mean, hopefully you guys found that useful. All of these filters that I put in here, all I had to do to get those in there is just using the profile like Fernay showed you here. You can copy and paste these filters right out. So here's like your retries, and you can see right here, retries from clients to AP. You can just copy and paste that, create a filter. I'll just show you how to create a new filter real quick. If that's okay, Fernay?
Absolutely.
All right, let me just show you this one. So if we want to create a new filter, I'm just going to create just a retries filter that's going to be all retries. So that'll be an interesting one to look at as well. So now we're not filtering on anything other than just saying, okay, show me all the retries. I'm going to take out even the 2DS so we can just look at all retries. And now I'm going to check the box for all retries, and let's change it to the same kind of dotted line that we were using, or I'll just use dots. And there you go. So that's all retries now that it's showing over that period of time, all the way down into 1 millisecond interval, and you can see those. Yeah, I mean, that's just how many retries. I mean, if you look at the y-axis here, you can see we're seeing up to, in a 1 millisecond interval, all the way up to over 60 retries in a 1 millisecond interval. So, I mean, when you're talking about Wi-Fi, there's a lot going on in the air all at the same time. That's what I got. Thanks, guys.